So I started making collage as a way to think more playfully and abstractly about making pictures. I wanted to discourage my reliance on reference photos, and I also wanted to establish more of a daily practice, a daily routine. It's really helped me to loosen up. It's led to some pretty interesting experiments, and it's basically improved my art practice overall. So if you're stuck in a creative rut, or you just want to think more abstractly about forms and color, or if you have expensive art materials that are just gathering dust on your shelf, then I want to share with you 7 reasons to try collage. Reason number 1. Collage will help you to learn about the importance of composition. It lets you play with shapes and color relationships and really helps you hone and develop your intuition. Fundamentally, there are a few principles of good composition or good design, and these are balance, contrast, hierarchy, movement, proportion, repetition, and unity. Since composition and design are one of the most important considerations in art, collage really will help train your eye to recognize shapes and colors that are in a proper relationship to each other. And by proper, I just mean what is looking good to you. By moving shapes and colors around, you can see how just changes in placement or subtle shifts in scale and proportion really affect the overall composition. And as these elements just start to pull together, you can actually watch and sense when things are clicking and just feeling right. There is a great book by artist and master colorist Josef Albers called The Interaction of Color. It's right here. And I also recommend there is a companion book that was just published last year, which is a practical guide to these color experiments. They work really well together, these two books. This book describes the magic of color relationships and how colors can change based on what other color is surrounding it. So, in fact, this book contains color studies that are really rudimentary collages, just about training your eye to notice color. And collage basically will help you develop your own sense about how colors can change. And this is something that you really need to participate in, because you honestly, you won't believe the magic of color until you experience it yourself, just moving color around and just comparing color next to another color. It is really almost like magic. You'll begin to see how shapes and color relationships can elicit feelings, and in this way you develop your own personal style and explore what looks right to you. You have to develop your taste, and you practice this discernment like exercising a muscle. And it's this knowing when things are working that is really, really important to nurture. Reason number 2. With collage, it's really easy to change your mind. You can practice abundance as shapes generate more shapes, and you will create from a sense of play by asking, what happens if? Collage gives you a chance to move shapes and colors around and to compare all the options. You'll learn not to take design decisions too seriously or personally, because it's just paper. You can play and experiment and discover when things are working and when they're not. And with collage, you always end up with leftover shapes that can be used later for future collages. You'll notice that you will go through phases where you're really interested in one color combination, and then that kind of dies and you're fascinated by another thing. It's just really interesting just watching that progression of just your own kind of personal explorations. With collage, nothing really needs to go to waste, but it's important to pay attention to when you're holding on too tightly and you just need to learn to let go. Sometimes it feels hard to use your art supplies and to play and experiment, but actually the only wasted art supply is the ones that you're not using. So if there's anything that you're saving for a special future project, the time to use that supply is now. Art supplies, they do have a shelf life. They will dry out, they'll kind of change in consistency. So you should just get into the habit of using what you have and use all of your supplies and play with color mixing and layering. And all these are experiments that can just be used as collage paper. It's really important to cultivate a practice of abundance in your art. This idea that more can equal more. There's a principle called the Pareto principle. It's also known as the 80-20 rule, and it describes a pattern where in any accumulated effort, there's 80%, which is kind of inconsequential, and 20% that really, really stands out. And you can see this pattern play out in the fact that most people only wear about 20% of the clothes that are in their closet, and also in business, where only about 20% of the customers account for 80% of the sales. So in art, you need to keep making the middling work, the not so great work, to discover the 20% of the great work. And sometimes you can't really even see what's good at first. So you just have to focus on the making and know that the good will be discovered, and these pieces will reveal themselves over time. You can give yourself the freedom to experiment and play and just not imagine that you have to create a masterpiece every time you sit down to work, because reality doesn't work that way anyway. You have to just ask yourself, what happens if I do this, and go from there. And also, you're going there every day to practice. So if it doesn't work out one day, you can try again the next day. Reason number 3, you do not need expensive art supplies to make collage. You can use what you have, you can use what you can find. So you don't need to buy expensive art supplies to start making collage. If you don't have any paint, you can use leftover wrapping paper or pages from magazines. You can also even buy colored cardstock from the dollar store or even IKEA. Envelopes are also a great source for collage paper. Sometimes they come in really nice bright colors, and even the white ones can be interesting. You have to look for ones that have a security pattern printed on the inside. You just have to cut this envelope open and you can use it in your collages for some really nice texture. I have a huge collection of different patterns and colors of these different envelopes. Basically anything that you can cut with a pair of scissors and will lie relatively flat can be used in collage. So this could be newspaper, old notes, junk mail, tickets, whatever. There's even a category on eBay called paper ephemera, where you can actually buy old boxes of vintage paper like accounting records, postcards, and other old documents. I'll even take my leftover paint and make painted paper for collage. I'll just paint on regular 8.5 by 11 bond paper that's used for printers and photocopiers. It's a great way to play with different color combinations and practice mark making and line control. And I'll also use this paper just to wipe my brush off and to create unexpected shapes and different color mixes. Or I'll even just use it to take my paintbrushes out for a test drive and see how many different kinds of marks I can make. It's also fun to layer pastel and paint and marker and ink and see what happens. And none of these experiments are a waste of time or material because you can always use them for collage. Reason number 4 is with collage, there is no drawing time or toxic materials used. It's really quick and it basically resists that feeling of looking overworked. Sometimes it's hard waiting for paint to dry, and in fact that expression is synonymous with being bored. And I think this is why artists sometimes stop making art, because it just gets hard to keep that momentum going. Oil paints can take almost forever to dry. Acrylic paints will dry faster, which is why it's great for making collage paper. But if you're working on a painting, you still need to wait around for the layers to dry. With collage, everything is ready to go. You can work fast and not worry about your clothes or your wet brushes or the paint drying out. And there are no toxic materials. There's really only glue and tape, and all of the glue sticks that I've seen are labeled as non-toxic. And I also found this really great Italian glue called, I think it's called Coccoina glue. It's been made since the 1920s from potato starch and almond oil, and it smells like almond extract, which is amazing if you love marzipan like me. It will dry white and it's water soluble, so it's perfect for gluing paper to paper. And it's also just like really super cute. It's an aluminum tin, and it comes with this like a little brush, and that's the glue inside. It's like working with a dessert. So with collage, you don't need a plan. You can just jump right in and get started. Sometimes it's helpful to set a timer if you find yourself deliberating, but if you're working at a manageable size, then you can usually finish a collage in just about 20 or maybe 30 minutes. The hardest part really is just getting started. And once you start just moving the paper shapes around, the compositions, they just almost suggest themselves. There's a saying that if you leave a painting unfinished for a day, it will leave you for 3. So basically, it gets exponentially harder to get back into a work that you haven't completed. When working abstractly, sometimes there can be some confusion about like, how do you know when the work is done? But just like you're training your eye to recognize color, harmonies, and strong composition, you also need to develop an awareness for knowing when a work is complete. And this is a feeling that is just basically developed over time and will continue to get more sophisticated. Usually it's really hard to overwork a collage like you can a painting. And some will call this when you're licking the surface, you're just kind of going over that same patch of canvas with your paintbrush. It just ends up looking just labored and not very exciting. So there's something just really always fresh about a collage. It's something about the arrangement of just cut pieces of painted paper that will just stand out without looking just overworked and labored. Reason number 5. Collage helps you to establish some consistency and a habitual routine that you can go to every day. It will also just help get you into that flow state of creating as you go along. Collage is a really low pressure way just to warm up and just get started. You don't need to have an outcome in mind as you learn to listen to the work and create as you go. There's a kind of magic when you develop a consistent practice. When you commit just even like 20 or 30 minutes a day, things that at first might feel hard and awkward quickly become almost second nature. And this routine isn't just about repetition and grind. It's more about refining your decision making and exercising that creative muscle to build up a fluency for your intuition and for your craft. And consistency has this magic effect where the effort that you put in kind of transforms into this sustained flow state where it's almost more of a personal meditation than work. There is another saying that the more you do, the more you do. And making art is really about the participating in the doing, the making of the thing. So this is why it's important to practice every day and to complete a work. Collage is a really easy way to establish a small routine and develop a consistent work habit that is really easy to start and also to finish. Reason number 6, with collage, you only need a small footprint of workspace. There is no messy cleanup, and you need minimal tools. You do not need a big space to make a collage. Your work area can be the size of your kitchen table, or it can be, like me, the size of my cutting mat. You just can make a collage basically as big or as small as you want it to be. It is nice to have a bit of space because sometimes certain compositions can suggest themselves just in the disorder of cut paper scraps, but that's not necessary to start working. You can even make a collage in a hotel or a coffee shop because there is no messy cleanup. It's really easy to make a travel collage kit, but just be careful about taking scissors or an X-Acto blade on a plane. And I've even made a collage on a beach, but I really wouldn't recommend outdoor locations because wind is not really friendly to cut scraps of paper. There are a minimal number of tools required for collage. All you need is paper, scissors, and glue or tape. The work area is really easy to set up just simply by pulling out a few scraps of paper, and it is really quick to pack away. You don't need to worry about making your clothes dirty, you won't leave a big mess of wet paint, and you don't have to worry about cleaning out your brushes. Reason number 7, collage is accessible to almost everyone, and you probably already have the skills. The great artist Henri Matisse started making collages when he was in his 70s. He was bedridden from surgery, and he didn't have the physical stamina to paint or sculpt, so he began creating his cutouts with painted paper and scissors while lying in bed. Matisse ended up making hundreds of these collages, and he felt that he was truly expressing himself with this medium. His collages are recognized as some of his most famous work. Think of the Blue Nude series. And he felt that color had healing properties, and he often brought collages when he was visiting sick friends. If you know how to use scissors and tape or glue, then you can make a collage. In fact, you can even ditch the scissors and just tear the paper apart. When I work in my studio, I will sometimes use rulers and X-Acto blades and weights, but it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. One thing that is great about cutting shapes out with scissors is that it's hard to be too precise, and this is good for not being too precious about the outcome. It's okay, and it's actually often better when something is just a little bit wonky and not exactly straight. Also, there can be a lot of pressure to stick to a certain art niche when making art, and painting can feel intimidating because it's so historically revered, and there are some true technical aspects that you really need to consider. But there are no gatekeepers with collage, and there's really no rules about the medium. Us artists, we tend to be high in openness, which means that we love new experiences and learning how to do different things. So collage can remind us that it's important to experiment like Matisse, to keep that spark of curiosity alive, and to recognize when we are getting bored and repetitive. Really, the more we can make, the more we can explore our sensibilities, and our own unique style will continue to unfold for us. Making art can feel uncomfortable because often you don't know where to start, and sometimes you don't really like what you're making initially. Sometimes I can get in the habit of buying art supplies just as a substitute for making art. And I know this is a form of procrastination or resistance because it can really be intimidating just to confront that blank piece of paper or canvas and justify the reasons why I should be spending time just playing with colors on a surface. With collage, it's a way to remind myself that the practice of making is just as important in and of itself. It's just the practice of doing, of just making the thing. It has really motivated me to get into the studio and to use my materials and just get started. And if sustained, this practice will inevitably lead to other ideas and tangents. Basically, it just really gets the ball rolling. In a way, collage is to art almost like what a DJ is to music. You take these bits of fragmented stuff and you combine them together to make this new whole thing, a unity that's just composed of all these different parts. And somehow this feels especially relevant today, where we really struggle to isolate these meaningful moments from this flood of information, which is steadily enabled by technology, to try to create moments of solace and just wonder in the world. So I hope that I've convinced you to give collage a try. It's definitely really rounded out my art practice, and it might do the same for you. Thanks for watching. Now go make a collage.